Okay, it's time for a 1186 discussion. I was very excited for this one as we thought this was going to be the end of Vesperia, and it was for the most part. We get a lot of stuff in this chapter. Luffy starts to literally fight Emu. Vesperia basically ends. We learn about the scar on Brook's head that we see in current times via his skeleton form. So a lot of stuff is going down, and it picks up basically where we left off. We see like just a shot of the entire town, and I'm not going to show any manga panels because I don't know if I could do that, but it's like a shot of the entire country just being like attacked, and people are saying, "Don't give up. We have to survive," that kind of thing. But then we cut back to where we ended last chapter into the castle, and Brook is just like, "Whoa, what? What's happening?" And we see like three panels stacked next to each other. The guy on the right, Shuri, and then Marcus Mars in his yokai form. The guy on the right, a lot of theorizing, and if you look at his hat, very similar to what Gunko is wearing, kind of further brings the idea that it could be her real father, which we'll get to in a second. And then Marcus Mars, who might be being controlled by Emu right now, similarly to Saturn and Gov Valley, which we'll again get to in a second. But we get immediately back to Brook, who is just going straight for Ruben, like, "Oh my god, we need to get a medic, big bro." And then we get a little bit of a panel that I don't know if we really needed. I guess they're having a moment, but we get to see when he was called Big Bro the first time and what that means. And then we see Emu immediately on the left. Now, when I say Emu, we see his silhouette form right after Brook says Big Bro for the last time. And when I originally read that, is that Emu was there and that he was enjoying that. By there, I mean he was controlling Marcus Mars. That's how he made Shuri into her demon form. But what I've seen some people discuss this, and I think this is what actually is really happening. The first part, yes. But the second part that he's enjoying it, he's looking at that and looking at that the same way that he looked at him and Joy Boy back in the Void Century, because as we learned, they knew each other, and they might have been friends once upon a time. So whenever he killed or saw Joy Boy getting killed, maybe he had a moment himself. That's what could be right there. And then we scroll down, and it says, "This sudden intrusion is quite the inconvenience," which shows that they're obviously not happy with this. And we get to the next panel, which people had been mentioning a lot last chapter, is Brook's like, "Wait a minute, you're not Shuri. She's not capable of this. How is this happening?" Because when Brook first saw Shuri, or Gunko rather, in present times, he was very angry. And we were like, did he not think maybe something was happening with her? How did he believe that off the cuff? So he didn't believe it off the cuff, but then Shuri's like, "Brook, hey, guess what? I'm a celestial dragon," which confirms what we were thinking after last chapter. This guy wasn't my real dad. Again, that's what we were thinking. And then she's just like, Brook's like, "Wait a minute, you're Ruben's child. What are you talking about?" And then she's like, "No, I was a celestial dragon. These 16 years were a waste. Did you know that that call for 1,000 slaves isn't true? Instead, he didn't just want to hand me over." I did not see that coming. What that kind of reads as to me as, there's a couple things here I think people are mentioning, and the way I take it as, it's not Prince Reuben, or King Reuben rather, saying, "Hey, I don't want to keep this lie going." I think it's him fearing that, hey, if I offer Princess Shuri up, I can't mention this to the townspeople or anyone, because if the word gets out, they'll definitely be like, "Wait a minute, our country's going to get destroyed and become a lawless land, and all we have to do is give up one person who is already a celestial dragon." That would be a lot easier to stomach than Reuben saying, "Hey, everybody, if we give 1,000 random people as a slave to the world government, we can continue to exist," because that would mean that maybe they could be chosen themselves, and people wouldn't be okay with that. So I think that's where that's getting read as. I don't think it's trying to protect the lie. I think it's trying to protect Shuri herself, because regardless if the lie came out or not, if people had just learned that this Asperia was going to get destroyed, or you could just give up one person, I think they would have did that. So after Brook and Shuri have some more conversation about what the hell is going on, we get the epithet of the guy that we were wondering. Knight of God, Saint Manmeyer Grove. So I thought he might have been the commander of the Knights of God at that time. That was wrong. It does not appear to be Kong, to everyone's dismay. Could it be Shiryu's father? I don't know still. But Saint Manmeyer Grove, if that's his name, it's a rough translation, so we'll see in the full thing. And interestingly, it says, "Wait a minute, I remember you now. There was a kid with an afro among Candel's attendants. You weren't allowed to come near me." So if you remember, before that whole mist, like months before that, like there was something weird going on. Candel suddenly became bedridden and ill for a few months. And that was probably, we don't get it confirmed here, but that was probably when Gro was there, and when Shuri was conceived, kind of in that same realm of Ginny and Bonnie, against her will, if you will. So, not great, but we learn who that is, and then we get some conversation about, like, the eye, because Gunko has mismatched eyes, and Gro says, we normally wouldn't come back all the way like this, but that kid has mismatched eyes, and the Great One desires them. Which is really interesting, because among celestial dragons, the horrible people, but we've seen a few examples throughout the story where they clearly care about their children. Like most recently in the God Valley flashback, Garling with Shanks and Shamrock clearly wanted to save them, although he didn't care about their mother at all. This is a little bit different. Gro apparently does not care about Shuri at all, but Emu does because of the eyes. Now, I'm not really sure where Oda is going with this, because we've had a few characters in the story with the eyes are a little bit different. Emu, Mihawk, Pudding, and Shuri. Haven't really advanced on any of those ideas very much. Now, Blackbeard did capture Pudding. We don't entirely know why. So maybe at some point this plot point will be brought back up, and I'm very excited to see where Oda goes with this, because I personally don't know. If you have any ideas, drop in the comment section. So we learned that he doesn't really care about his actual daughter, which is interesting. And then we have a few more moments where, like, Brook is still obviously very in shock, and he's crying, Reuben's dead, and Shuri, like, points to him, and you see that they're about to have a fight. Now, this next part is also very, very important because of the technique Shuri uses. Shuri stabs him in the head. And a couple things there. That's where he gets the scar. And the way she uses that technique is kind of similar to when we saw Brook use it in Thriller Bark, it appears. So it might be kind of similar to where Harold stabbed Jarl. Harold had like a bit of himself maybe at that point. Shuri maybe wasn't fully transformed yet either, and was able to kind of control and pinpoint where she stabbed Brook. And as this is happening, I don't know if Brook is singing. I imagine once he gets stabbed in the head, he's not singing, but we hear one of his songs being sung, like from frogs to cattle, from kings to chattel. Everyone ends up the same as bones. And then we kind of fast forward there. We see Shuri leaving with Gro. We don't see Marcus Mars anywhere. We see like a faint bit of Emu's silhouette in the corner there. Then we just wake up and see Brook being woken up by what appears to be a lot of his subordinates saying, Commander, he's awake. It's a miracle. And somehow, although he did get stabbed in the head, it missed his bloodstream, his vessels, and his brain, which he kind of contributes to his afro. As he's woken up, he's like, wait a minute, what just happened? Can you remind me? And they're like, we don't want to do that right now. And he's like, no, do it. He learns that the king is indeed dead, and Shuri was seen leaving on a government ship, and that most citizens have fled the country, and it doesn't really matter because they're going to become refugees, and that Asperia is now going to become a lawless land of pirates. And that's the last thing we get, is Brook just like crying as he woke up and was told, he's like, whoa, oh my god, that all just happened. So we don't, in this chapter, get a conclusion about like what happened after. I had thought that maybe somehow he was the only one alive. He gets stabbed, he gets that scar, he's the only one alive, they think he's dead, that's why he just like wanders off at some point. We don't know like what happens, because this is at 28, right? At 38, he dies for the first time, so we don't get anything about that like 10-year gap, how he found the Rumbar Pirates, what they were doing, which I don't know if we have time for that, but I thought we might get a little bit of like, okay, this is directly what happened afterwards, and we're seeing the Rumbar Pirates, how he joined them, but we don't get any of that. Maybe we'll get that if and when they free Shuri at some point. So Brook is crying, and then we travel back to the current, and I just want to point this out, because I pointed this out the first time, and maybe I misread this the first time. Do you guys remember, like, how this flashback started? I'll tell you how this started. This started when Jinbei, they were about to go do something, and Jinbei went, guys, does she live or does she die? And is he saying that we need to kill her or she dies, or do we save her because she's going to die? I don't know. It was a weird statement from Jinbei there. That's how this started, and Brook went, wait a minute, maybe she's being controlled. So that's where this whole came from. Back to the current times, Brook says, back then, I didn't even know what a devil fruit was. And this is a point of contention I'm seeing online. I'm seeing people mention that, hey, maybe Brook had already eaten the devil fruit, and it saved his life the first time right there, and it can save it again. I actually don't think that's what happened. I think Oda made it a pretty clear point to be like the technique she's using is her having some of herself there and stabbing him in an area where she knows won't kill him. I don't think he has his devil fruit yet. Also, he said he didn't know what they were, and he would have accidentally ate it, potentially. And I always forget that, like, in the blues, devil fruits really aren't just that common. It really is just the Grand Line, the New World, where just tons of knowledge and most devil fruits are being used. So it would make sense that he could have eaten it, but I don't think that's what happened there. And then we get a scene where Brook is crying. He's like, man, that just didn't seem like the princess. And he's starting to realize maybe she's being controlled, which I think he has seen someone else, like some of the other giants or someone, get turned into a demon. So I think he's literally seen this happen in current times already, but I digress. He says, hey guys, he's looking at Jinbei, Usopp, Nami, and Frankie. Can I put my faith in the princess once more? Which is kind of his Nami moment, his Robin moment, his Sanji moment at Whole Cake Island, where he's like asking the crew for help. which is pretty nice. And then he's thinking, hey, if she's a victim, then I want to save her. And we get like flashbacks of when she was saying run Brook, and he's thinking, oh my gosh. And he says, everyone please lend me your strength. And Franky's crying. Usopp and Nami and Jinbei are all thinking about attacks they can do. Nami's like, I wonder if lightning will work. Franky's like, I'm going to give it my best radical beam, as like tears are running down his face. Usopp's got some explosives, and Jinbei's just like, yeah, I'm going to use my fist. And surprisingly, if I made you guess, Franky, Usopp, Nami, and Jinbei, one of them is crying, one of them is not. Who do you think it is? It was Franky. What a guy. And as they are just like, yeah, getting like their poses ready, which I imagine will be like, back in the day when this was going down, at least in Enies Lobby, it was After Eating Grand Line. That was the song that was going to play. I'd be down for that. Maybe it's going to be Overtaken. But maybe not, because they're not walking. Brook is running in that direction. So that goes there. We're done with Brook and Sharif for now. I think we're going to get a moment. I'll touch on them in a second at the end here. So then we pan over to the Walrus School cafeteria. If you remember, Luffy is eating to regain his strength. And it looks like he's done, because he's like, all right, I feel great now. Any enemy that's coming, I'm going to beat the crap out of them, that kind of thing. And then we cut back to Loki and Imu, who, if you remember, are fighting. And Imu gives us a little bit of a history lesson here. 800 years ago, the giant race was defeated in a bid to rescue their children, which kind of indicates to us why they're trying to capture the children right now. He's saying history repeats itself. You will bend the knee. They're not just being assholes going after the children for some random reason. They did it before. They're doing it again. And Imu's doing his thing, like trying to lecture Loki about how confident he is. And Luffy just smashes him in the face, and that's where that ends. So I imagine that's where that's going to pick up next chapter, I would hope. I think we touched on a lot of the big ticket items, but there are a few other things I want to discuss. To get everyone's thoughts, because I haven't seen so much discussion on this as I thought I would. What's up with Gunko and the future of her in the story? I imagine she gets saved. What happens next? By saved, I mean broken out of Ragnar. And that's the first part. Broken out of Ragnar is the first part. So the ice, like, Ragnar is the only thing we know that can break the ice. We think the Galley Law Giants who are frozen around the Void Century, we think they're in Punk Hazard, frozen in the same ice by Ragnar. Is it even possible? Where's Oda going with this? They all attack it. Brook, Jinbei, Usopp, Nami, and Franky. Nothing happens. Or are we going to get some creative way to break the ice? I'm not sure, as Ragnar's a little busy right now fighting Imu, so not sure where that's going to go, but say they do get her out, right? What happens next? Is Imu still going to be controlled? Probably. Would all of this happen for her not to get saved? I would think not, so I think she's going to get saved. That shows us potentially how you can break some of the spell that Imu has. And I talked about this before. Like, I know we know where Shamrock came from and all that stuff, but is Shamrock potentially still also have some control over him? Do the Gorosei, does all the God's Knights have some sort of control over them like that? That would be interesting to see, because if Gunko does get freed and does no longer serve the world government in some capacity like you would think, does that mean she's going to join the Straw Hats? How much about Imu are we going to learn? Is that even possible if Imu is still around? And if Imu is still around, does that mean he gets defeated in this arc? A lot of questions to ask. Now, I've heard people mention, and I've talked about this many times, that Imu, like, can't get defeated in this arc. That wouldn't make, like, any sense, and I know the story is right here, Imu is right here, but I think what's going to happen is either the Straw Hats the clock's going to run out, and Imu's going to have to return, and they're going to be trying to survive, or Imu's just going to have to straight up flee. And the reason I don't think Imu can get defeated here is Blackbeard. If you remember, back in the day, Rocks, when he entered Marijois in the flower room, he said, hey, Imu, I will be back. And that isn't Oda telling us that, hey, Rocks himself is going to be back. Oh, that's what Rocks was saying, but Oda wasn't doing that just to kill him in God Valley years later. He was saying Marshall D. Teach. So I think we have to have a scene where Teach goes to the flower room and confronts Imu. I think it just has to happen. I don't see the Imu and the world government, at least Imu, maybe not the whole world government, ending here, because, like, who would that take over than one of the Gorosei that hasn't, I mean, they've been evil, right? But we haven't been focusing on them as the number one top tier. It'd be kind of random for them to take over. So that's just my thoughts. If you have other thoughts on that portion of it, let me know, because that's just my theory about what's going to happen. And, like, multiple things have to happen. Like, that has to happen. We have to go to Hachinosu, you would think, to save Garp, because there's that whole thing, right, where we're going to eventually, at some point, have a similar Ace X kind of execution. But you think Luffy this time would be like, hey, that's not going to happen. Is that really going to be the final war? We're just not going to investigate Castle Pangaea? You know what I mean? I digress. I think, yes, I'm very excited for 1187. Clearly, we're moving back into the Emu versus Luffy portion of this, and then at some point, we are going to revisit Shuri, and maybe we get a little bit of a flashback from her point, and then at some point, I would like to see how Brook joined the Rumbar Pirates and get that 10-year gap. It feels weird to not have gotten some of that, but I get it. Oda is like, hey, there's this huge moment of sadness. I want to build on that and finish that into this chapter as Emu gets punched by Luffy. I get that, but I would have liked a little bit about York, but now I don't really understand how that would fit in at all. But maybe Shuri asked Brook what happened next to him, and then we figure that out. I don't know. I think I've talked enough about this. If you guys have any thoughts, put it in the comments. Leave a like and sub. It helps the channel a lot. But yeah, I will see you guys next time. Appreciate it.